A racist cop arrests a woman for no reason, only to discover she's not just any citizen, she's his new boss. The shocking twist forces him to confront his biases, but will it be too late for redemption? It was a quiet, chilly evening, the kind that made the city feel both still and distant. The streets were dimly lit, the pale glow of streetlights casting long, twisted shadows across the cracked pavement. A cool breeze stirred the fallen leaves, swirling them in small gusts that danced through the empty sidewalks. Maya, a young black woman in her late 20s, was walking home after a long day at work. Her coat was wrapped tightly around her, her hands buried deep in the pockets for warmth. With each step, the weight of the day seemed to lift slightly, the rhythm of her feet on the pavement offering her a small moment of peace. But her solitude wouldn't last much longer. Officer Daniels, a seasoned cop known for his biases and discriminatory behavior, patrolled the neighborhood that evening. His gaze, hard and suspicious, scanned the streets, his thoughts clouded by assumptions and prejudices he'd carried with him for years. When he spotted Maya walking alone, something about the way she moved caught his attention. She was dressed simply, nothing about her stood out, but Daniels couldn't shake the gut feeling that something was off. His mind immediately began making assumptions. A young black woman, walking alone on this side of town, late at night. What could she be up to? Was she a criminal, or was she just another person he could stop and question? His grip tightened on the steering wheel, and he made a sharp turn, pulling his car to a stop near her. His eyes narrowed as he stepped out, his mind already formulating his reasons for approaching her. To him, she wasn't just a woman walking home. She was a threat. Officer Daniels stepped out of his patrol car with a determined stride, his eyes never leaving Maya as she walked briskly down the sidewalk. He called out to her, his voice sharp and commanding. "Hey, you! Stop right there." Maya's heart skipped a beat as she turned to face him. Her first instinct was to stay calm, but something about the way he was looking at her made her uneasy. He was already walking toward her, his hand resting on his holstered gun as if it were a matter of routine. "Can I see some ID?" he demanded, his voice dripping with an air of superiority. Maya's brow furrowed, her confusion quickly turning into frustration. "I'm just walking home," she said, trying to keep her tone steady. "I don't need to show you anything." The officer's eyes narrowed and his stance grew more rigid. "You're out here at this hour, alone. You think I don't know what's going on around here?" He motioned vaguely to the street, as if the very act of walking at night in this area was suspicious. "You're jaywalking. You're not carrying ID. I'm taking you in." Maya's chest tightened as she felt her heart race. "That's ridiculous," she said, her voice calm but tinged with disbelief. "I'm just trying to get home from work. I haven't done anything wrong." The officer scoffed, his face hardening as he dismissed her words. "You think I care about your story? You've been caught, and I'm done listening." Before Maya could respond, he stepped forward aggressively, grabbing her arm and yanking her toward him. She tensed, shock rippling through her as he slapped the cuffs on her wrists. "You're under arrest," he said, his voice now harsh and full of disdain. Frustration burned through her veins, but Maya remained composed. She could feel the weight of the handcuffs, the injustice of the situation heavy on her shoulders. She didn't resist, but her mind raced. Why was this happening? What had she done to deserve this treatment? After Maya was processed at the station, the cold metal of the handcuffs digging into her wrists, she stood silently in the holding area, her thoughts a whirlwind. She had been arrested without cause, dragged through this humiliating process, and yet, her composure remained intact. She refused to show the officer the anger she felt, but inside she was seething. Officer Daniels, however, was already feeling the weight of his actions. He walked back to his desk, trying to shake off the unease crawling up his spine. His shift had been long, but nothing could have prepared him for what would happen next. His phone rang, slicing through the quiet hum of the station. He answered quickly, hoping for something, anything, to take his mind off the situation. "Daniels," he answered brusquely. A voice on the other end sounded urgent. "Daniels, listen up. The woman you just brought in, Maya Williams? She's your new boss, head of the department, the new chief of police." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. The phone nearly slipped from his hand. "What?" he stammered, his pulse spiking. "Are you sure?" "She's the one," the voice confirmed. "The mayor's appointment. She starts Monday." The blood drained from Daniel's face. His mind raced, replaying every moment from the arrest, from the initial suspicion to the harsh words he'd thrown at her. His stomach churned with regret. He had arrested the very woman who now held the highest authority in the department. Meanwhile, Maya stood in the corner, her expression unreadable. Though the situation was unfolding in her favor, the disappointment in her eyes was impossible to miss. She wasn't angry, just resigned. "You're going to regret this," she said softly, her voice calm yet firm. "I'm going to take action, Daniels. You'll answer for your actions." She didn't need to raise her voice. Her authority, now clearer than ever, spoke for her. The consequences for Officer Daniels were swift and severe. By the next morning, word had already spread like wildfire within the department. The humiliation he felt was nothing compared to the fallout that followed. Maya, now officially appointed as the new chief of police, wasted no time in ensuring that Daniels was held accountable for his actions. The officer was immediately suspended and placed under internal investigation. The department launched a full review of his past conduct, uncovering a history of biased arrests, unfair treatment, and mistreatment of citizens, especially people of color. It was clear to everyone now that his behavior had gone unchecked for far too long. Daniels, once a figure of authority, was now a target of scrutiny and disdain from his colleagues. No one in the department could ignore the gravity of his mistake. As Maya reviewed the details of the investigation, her mind remained focused on justice, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been wronged by Daniels in the past. She made it clear that there would be no tolerance for behavior like his under her leadership. The day of her official appointment as chief, she walked into her new office, with the weight of the department's future on her shoulders. She was ready to lead with integrity and fairness, but as she stepped into the room, she couldn't help but glance back one last time at the holding cell, where Daniels had once stood, a man who had once believed himself untouchable. Meanwhile, Officer Daniels sat alone in his small apartment, contemplating the crushing reality of his situation. His thoughts churned with regret and disbelief. He had crossed a line he could never uncross. The shift in power, the realization of who Maya truly was, stung deeply. He knew, in that moment, his life and career would never be the same. At the heart of this story lies a powerful exploration of racism and the damaging effects it can have on judgment and decision-making. Officer Daniels, influenced by his deeply ingrained biases, immediately sees Maya not as an individual, but as a stereotype. His assumptions about her, based solely on her race and the fact that she's walking alone late at night, cloud his judgment entirely. In his mind, Maya is guilty before she even speaks a word. His discriminatory behavior isn't just a simple mistake. It's a reflection of the systemic racism that too often goes unchecked in positions of power. His actions are not only unjust, but are rooted in a long history of prejudices that he carries with him as a police officer. In his eyes, she is someone to be controlled, a threat to his authority. This is where the theme of power dynamics comes into play. Officer Daniels' assumption that he holds power over Maya is shattered when the truth is revealed. The officer's authority is called into question when Maya is revealed as his new boss, the newly appointed chief of police. The sudden shift in power catches him completely off guard, highlighting how fragile and temporary positions of authority can be, especially when those in power fail to recognize the true identities or worth of others. Maya's true identity, her strength, and her position of power weren't apparent to him, but they were always there, waiting for the moment when they would be revealed. This story also underscores the importance of justice and accountability. It's a stark reminder that actions have consequences, particularly for those in positions of authority. Officer Daniels' abuse of his power results in a loss of respect, his career in jeopardy, and an opportunity for the justice system to correct the imbalance of power. In the end, it's a clear lesson. Those who misuse their authority must be held accountable for their actions.